How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I've got a very special guest for you. I last spoke to this
Ah,
guy
you're
back
saying
in.
about everybody. Get the fuck out of here.
We last spoke in episode 224. Really, really popular episode. Today, I am joined by Steve Tripp. How are you doing?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks again for having me on, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
No worries at all. Really looking forward to catching up with you. I know we caught up a little bit before. But what have you been up to? How was Miami? What's been happening in your world?
So recently, it's been a bit chaotic. The spring usually tends to get like that with competitions here at the gym and myself competing as well. So been pretty not complaining at all, but been pretty straight out, a lot of travel. More recently, we last spoke. I was headed down to Miami to do my
Mhm.
first pro strongman show. The story behind that, so I've been competing in strongman since 2017. I kind of got involved in it just to, I had some members when I opened my first facility. I had some members and trainers that wanted to compete in powerlifting and compete in strength sports. So I was like, fuck it, I'll do it with you. So I did, and I ended up winning the shows that I did. So I said, I guess I'm a powerlifter and strongman now. And I started competing in strongman. I went to nationals in 2017. That's when I broke my arm. And my arm never came back. But I continued to compete, and I've done probably 20 state shows since. Most of which I have to zero the overhead, but I've won every single one of them. I've been able to win every single show
Nice.
without any semblance of overhead, just by being so dominant in the other events. I went back to nationals this past year and took third, which was heartbreaking. I had a bit of an equipment malfunction in the overhead, um,
Right.
of which it was a sandbag, keg sandbag, and I'd finished all three in training 2 or 3 times, and I ended up losing feeling in my arm because of the nerve damage with the sleeve I was using. And I was only able to get one of the three implements in the competition. I took like 32nd out of 50 in that event. If I had finished, which I was completely capable of doing, even if I finished with the slowest time, I would have taken seventh. I ended up winning all four of the other events. I tied for first on the fifth, and I ended up losing. I ended up taking third place by 3 points. If I had finished the overhead, I would have won by 20. So that was devastating. And in all honesty, I really had no interest or intent to compete again after that because I was so frustrated and bothered. I wasn't going to compete again until I got this arm figured out. And I'm still trying to figure it out, working with PTs and neurologists, trying to figure out what I need to do to get this arm back. But a good friend of mine, Nico, found this show down in Miami called Ragnarok Games. I found out later the reason why he signed up is he's been chasing this guy, Jason Finnerty, around for a couple of years. Jason Finnerty is another strongman competitor, total stud, huge, super strong, holds multiple records. And they go back and forth on social media all the time. So he signed up for this show to chase him. And I look at the events, and it was just a big, classic, heavy 2 day event. And I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck it, man. I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna do it. So I ended up signing up. This federation is kind of its own thing. It's Captain Corp. This guy named Ralph Avalone, and he has some big plans. He really wants to take this and go with it. He's got some financial backers, and he talks a big game. Made all these huge promises, saying the venue is this. It's going to be huge. It's going to be sold out. $20,000 in cash prizes for the pro class. Here are all the events. It's going to be like nothing you ever seen. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, whatever. I just want to lift weights, and whether you come through or not, I don't mind a week in Miami. It's going to be a great
Yeah.
week regardless. So I originally signed up for the heavyweight class, which for me is upper class anyway, because middleweight was 275 and under. I walk around like 265. So I signed up for heavyweight, which was 276 to 330. And then there was super heavyweight, which was 330 plus, and then the pro division.
Right.
So I signed up for heavyweight. I was like, I'm just going to have some fun and see what I can do. And I ended up getting a phone call from Ralph, who again is the promoter. This is a big show. There's 200 competitors from all over the world, representing 60 countries, pay per view, like the whole nine. And this guy
Yeah.
calls me, and he's like, "Hey, Steve, it's Ralph from the Ragnarok games." And I'm like, "Hi, how you doing?" Like, and he said, "Listen, I wanted to call. I've been watching your training." And that's the thing with this guy, Ralph. He's very involved. There's a lot of individual attention to the athletes. He's very passionate. And he reached out to me and was like, I was curious if you'd be interested in perhaps changing classes. And I thought because it was such a big show, he's like, just do middleweight, you'll be more competitive. But he's like, you
Right.
belong in the pro division. So I was like, I knew the weights. I mean, they were all there for me, but they're all just fucking heavy. And I'm only 265. The pro guys are all 330 plus. They're all 330, 400-pound guys. But basically, there's no way I was going to go down there and compete in the heavyweight class. This guy specifically reached out to me. So, of course, I was going to step up. So I ended up doing it. And it was definitely the right decision. About him and his production and the show itself, he came through on everything he said he was going to do. I ended up taking fifth. We all got paid. We all walked out of there with checks. The show was overwhelmingly red done. The production value of the pay-per-view was World's Strongest Man caliber. It was
Right.
Arnold caliber. I mean, I don't know if you saw it in the live stream, but it was fucking amazing.
Yeah.
There was some inconsistencies with the equipment here and there, but I couldn't have been more satisfied and just thrilled to be a part of such a huge show. And he's so passionate. And there's a lot of naysayers that say there's no way he's going to be able to pull this off. It's too much, all these false promises. But I speak for myself and the rest of the athletes when I say that this guy really delivered a very special show. I'm a pro now. He offered me a sponsorship, and I can't wait for the next one. So Miami was fantastic, a great experience.
Cool. And I think, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think when you said there about if people have been questioning it, I think you can only go off if you've actually experienced it and done it, and he delivered on what he said. That's all. And
it's only been one show. We'll see how things play out, but I'll ride this train till the wheels fall off. And I speak to Ralph very consistently. I talk to him a couple times a week, and he's very, very passionate, and it's not for lack of effort. So I'm going to continue to stand by him and continue to do everything I can to promote his show and what he's trying to do. I'm sure Nico feels the same. I got a lot of friends and training partners here that are excited to come on board as well. And I'm telling you, man, Ralph's doing a great job so far. And September is looking to be a great show. It's going to be the opening event is a max deadlift. So he's putting up 20 grand for anyone to beat the American deadlift record. Wow. And he'll pay. Yeah. I'll tell you, he'll pay. I walked out of there with a check. And then it's a 2-day show. 8 to 10 events. The events look great. It's going to be in Orlando this time. And again, it's in September. It's called the World Strength Games. If you want to check it out at World Strength Games on Instagram. But it's going to be a great show, and I can't wait. So
nice. Is that the next target then, or have you got some competitions in between for them?
Well, I have. I'm doing a powerlifting meet here, a USPA meet here. I got back from. I went from Miami to the Arnold in Ohio, which was great. Had a nice exhibition lift at the Strength Co booth there with a bunch of fucking freaks. That was so much fun. We put on a great show. And then I came home and I had about 2.5 weeks to prep for this powerlifting competition. I'm fucking tired. It's been a long few months, but I really just signed up for this meet to get an updated DOT score for the end of this year because I'd like to do the American Pro in October. A lot of 275s are going to be there. Some really, of the top 5 275s in the world, I think like 4 of them are going to be there. Right. So it'd be a really cool opportunity to compete against them and share the platform with them. So that's kind of why I'm doing this meet. I should be able to match or come close to my previous best. I'd like to hit a 760, 770 squat. That'd be cool if it's there. Maybe 860, 870 deadlift if it's there. But just looking to have a good time, get an updated dots. I don't need much. I'll probably get the dots I need in my openers and just have some fun with it. And then I'm going to take a 2.5 or 3 month off season where I kind of address. I'm actually going to work with MST Systems out of the UK. Oh, okay. Shane Germain, I've been talking to him. I actually have a call with him later on today. So I'm going to work with him for a few months, kind of give my body a different stimulus for a while, and hopefully be able to express some more strength as I get back into a more comp specific prep figure end of June, early July, leading into September. So that's the plan.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I've followed a couple of. I've not spoken to Shane myself, but followed a lot of content that he puts out there, and he put some cool stuff out there.
Yeah, he seems to have a really good approach, and I studied a triphasic approach a bit, incorporating more GPP work and stuff like that, but I've never really done it myself. And even though I'm somewhat familiar with it, I don't really know how to implement it into programming and write a complete program block based upon that. And he claims it's his specialty. So I'm definitely really eager and excited to kind of offer myself a different stimulus and see how far I could go. Because I'm starting to feel a little slower, a little more lethargic, training heavy, competition specific for as long as I have. So I think, 8 to 12 weeks of a different stimulus will serve me very well for the end of the year, because September's a huge show, and the American Pro is a big show. So I want to have a really nice prep leading into it. Take 2 or 3 months and take a bit of an off season, and then all systems go as we head into those big comps.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, cool. Sounds good. And with the you mentioned a couple of things there with the topics that we'll touch on, and one of the things that you said of putting the efforts in, and you wanting to maybe change training up a little bit. And the first question or first topic that I wanted to chat about, because I know you say, especially the introduction of your podcast, that pursuit of progress, and how much in terms of seeing progress comes down to that effort and intention that people need to put in.
Yeah. And consistently,
yeah,
for years and years and years, there's kind of this pretty strong initiative, especially with social media and so much content being available to so many people, which is great, but there's pros and cons to it. And there's definitely this camp that's emerged over the last 3 to 5 years, this optimal camp. A lot of physical therapists and biomechanics and people who are very, very well versed in biomechanics and exercise physiology. There's a lot of content and information out there about this optimal push, and I'm sure you're familiar with what I'm referring to. Basically, just taking an extremely deep and extremely thorough systematic approach to weight training, and understanding the tissues of the muscle and alignment and physics, and basically understanding how to put yourself in what could be considered an optimal position for a lat pull down or a bicep curl or a tricep exercise. And what ends up happening is they end up demonizing a lot of the classic movements, saying that barbell rowing is trash and deadlifting is trash, and there's just so much more optimal ways to do things. And to me, for someone like myself who's been doing this for 20 years, I can ingest this information and I can say, yeah, that makes sense, and I can kind of apply it and kind of take certain, some low hanging fruit and take some of the meat and potatoes of what they're saying and apply it to my own training with a strong base. But what ends up happening is a lot of newbies, a lot of beginners who haven't developed the foundation, the necessary and essential foundation of just authentic hard work and really mastering the basics, the basic barbell moves, the squats, the presses, the rows, the deadlifts, and master them and train them for years and years to develop a base. I really think it's so important to have that base first before you start kind of looking down what would be considered the optimal path. And I also can't help but just have the perspective that what a lot of these people are doing is they're trying to outthink the hard work, the authentic hard work it takes to build an impressive physique and an impressive strength. And you're never going to be able to do that. You have to have an approach. You have to have an understanding. It's super beneficial to have an understanding of biomechanics and leverages and positions to bias certain tissues and also prevent chronic injury and chronic pain. There's a place for that. But you know what? It's never going to supersede the importance of grit and balls and pain tolerance and consistency and being more and more comfortable as you get more and more uncomfortable. And I can just see a lot of the youth and the people that are just getting involved in this hobby to kind of just really overthink things, paralysis by analysis, and become kind of like a movement zealot. And I hate to say it, but you're never going to get anything done. You're never going to get anywhere. No matter how optimal you think you may be doing things, you're not going to get anywhere unless you're putting in the really authentic hard work and mastering and progressing the basics.
Yeah. Where do you think that's come from? Because I agree. I think sometimes people overthink things and want to plan every minor detail, and they spend so long planning that actually they forget to actually, okay, so actually I do need to go to the gym and I actually need to put some weight on the bar. Do you think that's just come because there's so much information out there with social media, or where do you think that's come from?
So there's that, the availability of knowledge, which is, again, it's very valuable, but it can come at a cost. I also just think culture and just us as a species, like we're just getting softer and softer. Life is getting easier, things come easier. And I think overall, generally speaking, when you look at the macro, we're just softer. People don't like to work anymore. People don't want to work anymore. They don't understand the value of difficult tasks. They want to, someone just asked me a couple weeks ago, hey, what's the easiest way to get abs? And I'm like, motherfucker, your mind's broken. You've already lost it. You already don't get it. Like, what's the easiest way? It's not easy. It's not easy. And if it was easy, why would you want it, dude? Like, your mind's broken. You got to fix that shit. Nothing that's valuable comes easy, because value and it's value and things being difficult. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. How valuable something is directly proportionate to how difficult it is to get. Okay. And I don't want anything that's easy because it's not valuable. If all your boys had Lamborghinis, no one would give a fuck about Lamborghinis anymore because you all have it. Right. But there's one guy that's got a Lamborghini and it's fucking 600 grand. So it's like, that's sick. That's valuable. That's awesome. Not a lot of people are jacked and have abs and are super strong because it's difficult. It's really hard to get it. And that's, I wouldn't have it any other way. Value is directly proportionate to difficulty. And that is so lost in today's world because there's just there are easy ways to get certain things. Like when you think about, like, just for example, like wealth, like years ago, if someone was wealthy, it was like it came with status. Like they had to have a certain skill, or they had to be very, very alpha and very accomplished in order to be able to generate wealth. But today, there's so many ways to just make, wealth is everywhere. And there are a lot of people, many people, male and female, that have leveraged this kind of realm and be able to generate incredible wealth. But they're really not the most impressive people. It's just, things just kind of come easy nowadays. And you can see that kind of concept and that perspective kind of leak its way into certain things. And this fitness industry is no different. People are always trying to outthink and outsmart and overcomplicate the essential and necessary, authentic hard work it takes to get strong and get jacked. And they're never going to get anywhere doing that, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, no, I think we share a lot of the same thoughts. I think I got introduced this quote from another coach, and I think he took it. I can't remember who he took it off, and the quote is, "You're not entitled to the fruits of your labor, just the labor." And he told me this. Honest, this was probably at the start of the year when he told me this, or mentioned the quote to me, and it's just been stuck in my head. And I use this quite a lot, and it's kind of like, you've got to put that work in. No one's entitled to everything. You've got to work for it. How does that
Yeah.
kind of relate to, because I know sometimes when you said there about people building a base and getting stronger and building serious strength, building muscle, actually going in, or what's the difference? Sorry, it's probably a better question, between the effort that you put in, but then also going into the gym with intent and being like, right, okay, I need to put some weight on the bar. I need to see that progressive overload.
Well, in the onset, when people are getting started, just about anything works, right? Because you started from nowhere. So any stimulus you provide, as long as it's safe, you're going to see results. But then when you start to build a base, you start to put some more power on your lifts, start to move a little bit. You have to have a little more direction. You have to have a little bit more planning, and you have to have some intent in what you're doing. So basically, when you're a couple of years in, or at least a few months in, whatever it may be, context matters. There's an individual bias to all this, but you have to kind of decide, what are you looking for specifically, right? So are you training to get stronger? Are you training to improve your physique and build muscle? Are you training to expend energy, to lose body fat? What is your goal? And then once you're able to distinguish your specific goal, and it doesn't even have to be like a one goal for the entire training session, the entire block, but at least when you approach a specific movement, a specific exercise, it's like, all right, why am I doing this? And then once you can determine exactly what your goal is, then you can start to develop a better understanding and be very specific in your approach and how you're executing that lift to get the result that you're looking for, right? So let's just say, for example, if I walk into the gym and I want to build strong, I want to be as strong as I can. Well, the first thing is I have to understand the mechanics that go into the lift. I want to be as efficient as possible. I want to be as efficient as possible in coordinating all of my muscles to move that barbell from A to B, debatably within the constraints of competition lifting, right? So there's certain standards of how low you have to go, a certain range of motion. And you want to be basically as efficient as possible so that you can coordinate all the muscles to work together to bring that barbell from A to B. So let's say if that's the squat. Now let's say if I want to make my quads grow, right? Let's say if I want to build my quads, if I want to get bigger quads and I want to use the squat to do it. Well, in that case, there are certain ways you can manipulate and perform the squat differently to bias and isolate the quadriceps more than the other muscles involved. So if you want to grow your quads and you want to use the squat to do so, then maybe you can use a higher heel, use intent to have more forward knee travel to create more, a greater degree of flexion and extension at the knee joint specifically. Also, just like you said, intent, the way that I'm executing the lift, I'm almost trying to be almost like as inefficient as possible to place as much load and stress in the quads specifically to develop those muscles, if that's my goal. Whereas, like I said before, if I'm trying to be strong, I want to be able to move that weight as efficient as possible. So a coordinated effort versus a more isolated effort. And you can just see it's the same exercise. When you have intent and you have a specific outcome you're looking for, you can then kind of manipulate and make these small changes and adjustments to actually get what you want out of the lift, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and I think
definitely.
it ends up happening. A lot of people leave a lot of gains on the table because they're kind of like navigating and floating in between these two practices, and there is overlap between the two, right? But they're not the same. If you want to build as much strength as possible, there are these principles to understand and apply, and if you want to build as much muscle as possible, there are these principles and tactics you can apply to get the most out of it that you can. So it's important to kind of understand the why when you go into certain exercises and certain trainings.
Yeah, definitely. And you kind of touched on it once before about a little bit earlier when we were talking about there's so much information out there, whereas the length of time that or the experience that you've got in terms of training, you can kind of filter it out a little bit and know where to apply it. Do you think that with when we're looking to get stronger or build muscle, people have I don't know, just strength training, but strength training covers or weight training, barbell training covers quite a lot of things. And do you think that's just where they're putting their efforts and intentions into different areas and just realizing that actually for them it isn't useful, or they're just kind of like spinning the wheels because they don't know how to distinguish the two, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. I think that's a huge component. And that's something that I kind of observed and learned when I was younger. So I trained at a very specific gym at home when I was home for the summers and on winter breaks and whatnot. And then I would go to college and study and then come back and forth. And I'd been in gyms for close to a decade at that point. But I was in the same gym year round. And then when I started going back and forth to school, that's when I really noticed it. There's such a large population of individuals who spend a lot of time at the gym. They go to the gym 5-6 days a week, 2 to 3 hours a day. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. And it's not necessarily the lack of effort. I mean, they're showing up and they're working hard enough, but they're at a level where they have to have a little more of an approach, a little more of an understanding, and to kind of develop a specific goal in mind and execute accordingly to be able to push the needle. Because I saw, I mean, I'd be at the gym in the summer and I'd be around all these people and I'd see what they were doing and how much they were doing it with and how they looked. And then I'd go to school for 3 or 4 months and then I'd come back and they look the same. They'd be doing the same shit. They look the same. Nothing's changed. think about all that time. We're talking 2-3 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. That's 15 to 20 hours a week. And they're just spinning their fucking tires. They're not doing anything. And it's like if they just had a little more approach, a little more understanding of what they were trying to do, they could get so much more out of it. And I think that's a great topic to kind of dive into a little bit deeper, is very specifically when you're training for strength versus hypertrophy or building muscle or physique, how they're different and how they overlap and how you can approach your training accordingly to facilitate that. That makes sense.
I think with the phrase that went through my head there is that they're kind of like being busy doing nothing, just staying the same. What's kind of with that then? Because I've seen it as well. I always remember the example that I always use. Previous gym that I worked out, there was a guy coming in, and I saw him benching the same weight all the time, doing the same. I think he was doing like 3 sets of 10 every time he came in. And in the end, I just said, look, like what are you want to do in this? And his goal was to bench 100 kilos. Right, okay, then let's try and look at what we want to build for that. So actually building a bigger upper body, building up his back and his shoulders and his triceps. And then all of a sudden, it didn't actually take that long for him to bench 100. It just took that, like what you said that fine tuning. What is the? But it's also
point? if he's doing 3 sets of 10, he's improving his ability to do sets of 10. He's not improving his ability to do singles. And it's a totally different approach. It's a totally different approach for so many reasons, not only like fiber types and execution, but when you have when you have the appropriate amount of weight on the bar for 10 reps, if you think about it, you take the weight off, the first couple of reps are kind of like, they're just kind of there. And then 2, 3, 4 in, it's like, oops, starting to get tough. And then you start to get tighter. And then you start to have a good position. Then you start working. Then you start being focused. That's the thing with rep work versus maximal work, because maximal work, you have to know how to take that bar off and create tension, create position, create maximal everything to apply maximal force. Where if you're always training reps, you can kind of warm up into that, if that makes sense. And that's why you see a tremendous discrepancy when you first start taking someone through strength training, when you actually determine their 1 rep max. It's so odd how close their 1 rep max is to their 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 rep max. For example, your 10 rep max should probably be in the realm of 75% of your 1 rep max. So easy math. If you can bench press 100 kilos for 1, you should be able to bench press 150 kilos for 10. What you'll notice is a lot of people can bench press 150 kilos for 10, but they can only bench press 175 for 1 because they haven't taken the progressive overload approach and been able to actually adapt and do 10s and then 8s and then 5s and then 3s and then retest their single. If you're training 10s, you're improving your ability to do 10s. You're not improving your ability to do 1s.
And with that, with the goals of that, because I know we touched on earlier about you changing your approach to training and having a little bit of an off season. Is it a case of, because sometimes, like with anything, everybody always wants everything all at once, all at the same time? Is it a case of having one priority and then the other, focusing on strength and then kind of flip flopping side to side, or in some cases, can you work on both?
No, that's a great question, and I think what the reality is I've been somewhat plateaued for the last 2 years or so, 2 to 3 years. I haven't really put on a lot of size. I've been 265, 270 for 4 or 5 years. And my lifts, even when it specifically my barbell lifts, I've been squatting in the mid 750s. I've been squatting in the mid 700s for, low to mid 700s for 3 years. And I've been deadlifting in the mid 800s for about 2 to 3 years. So basically, I've been restarting training phases. I start over. I'll do like a 16-week block or a 20-week block where I'll do, I'll work in different variations of the lifts and I'll do high volume and I'll taper back down. But in order to break through this plateau, I'm going to have to essentially take a few steps back and offer my body a different stimulus before I can start taking more steps forward. And in all honesty, it's I don't look at it at all as like necessarily taking steps back, as I do almost like I'm loading and I'm taking a step back, but I'm taking a step back into like a slingshot. Yeah. Right. So if I take these 2-3 months and offer my body a different stimulus, check some boxes that haven't been checked in a while, bring up some weak points, bring up some asymmetries, and just kind of take a look at my foundation, see where everything's at, and start fresh. I'm loading myself back that hopefully when I do get back into strength training specifically, I'll be able to release all these new tools that I've put in my belt throughout this process and be able to apply it to the competitive lifts.
Yeah, I think from there, a lot of people, like what you said, do think of it as a step back. And do you think, especially when we said there about people spinning the wheels, do you think that's why people don't try and like adjust their training? Because I don't know, is it because they're scared that if they stop doing what they're doing, then they're going to ruin all the progress, or they don't know what else to do? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's lack of knowledge, but it's also stubbornness and it's also ego. They want to keep training heavy, even though none of these guys are even that strong anyway. They want to keep training heavy, and they want to go in there and they want to hit their 315 for 10 because it makes them feel good and it looks cool for the girl on the Stairmaster. But they've been doing 315 for 10 for 4 years, dude. Like what you want to do something different, and you have to take a step back and you have to peel some plates off. You have to do new things, and also new stuff is challenging, and it doesn't feel good. You don't feel you may not feel the same sense of accomplishment doing something that you suck at really well to bring up the things that you already think you're good at. A lot of people go to the gym to pat themselves on the back when they should be going to kick themselves in the balls. People go and they want to do their lifts, they want to hit their weights, they want to put 10 plates on a leg press because it makes them feel awesome, it makes them feel alpha, but that's not really going to get you there. Your challenges should light your direction. The weak points, the things that you're lacking, should be in the forefront. And once you're able to clean all that shit up, that's when you start making the progress. But the thing is a lot of the times that stuff's not very sexy. It's not very appealing. It's very, very humbling. But that's the show. This practice of training should be a humbling experience on the daily. The weights, the training, the exercises, the programs, the exercise selection, they should humble you literally on a daily basis. For every one exercise you do that feels good and that you're like, yeah, you should do 3 that you're like, fuck, that sucked. Because that's gonna bring you up.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were saying before about like exactly what you said there. If it was easy, you'd only have to do 4 weeks of training, and then that's it. With sort of like the quick fixes that people have, rather than actually, there's sometimes, especially sort of a couple of the blocks of training that I've done since the start of the year, where I just think, yeah, this is pretty tough. So yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it ties into what we said at the start. One thing that you touched on about touching on sort of the strength and the muscle building, just getting stronger, learning how to create tension. And sometimes, or a common question that people get asked is like, right, okay, so do we always have to do barbell squats for building our quads or something like that? Whereas sometimes people use machines for that, like a hack squat or a leg press, whatever it may be. Is the kind of, when you said there's a checklist for strength, checklist for muscle building, in terms of exercises, is there sometimes some, I don't know if leniency is the right word, but different tools that we're going to use, to take that step back to then catapult us going forward?
Oh, that's a great question. So absolutely. So exercise. So when it comes to differentiating between the stimulus and the kind of the best way to get their strength versus hypertrophy. So if you wanted to, you mentioned leg press and squats. So for one, it's really important to understand first conceptually when you look at like a strength athlete versus a bodybuilder, right? So strength athletes train movements and bodybuilders train muscles. Okay. It's not the same thing. A strength athlete basically wants to use their central nervous system to coordinate all the muscles involved to improve ability to execute a movement and move as much weight as possible from A to B. So we mentioned this before, being efficient and coordinating everything to work together. Whereas a bodybuilder instead wants to maybe isolate a very specific tissue or a group of tissues that perform the same task and create as much pressure and tension and damage in that specific tissue as possible to break the tissue down, and therefore during the recovery process elicit a growth adaptation to build tissue. So to put that within context, a strength athlete would train the squat to improve their ability to squat more weight, where a bodybuilder may use a squat to train their quads. So I think it's important to understand that concept before specifically answering the question about exercise selection. So the squat is obviously the king of all exercises. It's the best exercise. It's the best leg builder. It's the best strength builder. But is it though?
Yeah.
Is the squat the best way to put size on your quads? No, it's not. It can be, but you have to understand there's a price of admission. There's a prerequisite, and you have to have a high level of skill in the squat to be able to target and isolate and really push your quad. To take it a step further, when it comes to another concept to understand when it comes to strength training versus hypertrophy, when it comes to strength training, you have to think about proximity to failure, right? So when you're trying to improve your squat, a lot of guys and girls will think that like fucking grinding through reps, hitting PRs, even if they hit depth and they get 3 white lights, but the squat looks like shit. That's not good practice. That did not yield an effective strength adaptation at all. That did not make you stronger. That was a step back. Even if you hit a PR, and even if it would have gotten 3 white lights in competition, if it looked like shit, if you were shifting, if you weren't symmetrical, if it was a fucking awful grind, I'm telling you right now, that did not make you stronger. It's the submaximal work, the perfect practice, the timing, the technique, the position, the coordination of all the tissues working together. I know all of us follow the strongest guys and girls in the world. You watch them train. Are they ever fucking struggling? No. I mean, they are struggling, but because they're so adept and so skilled, they're able to really coordinate everything and move maximal weight, and it always looks perfect. Very, very rarely do you see these guys and girls grinding out reps, because that's the best way to create a coordinated strength adaptation. Now, and I promise I'll get to the point with this. On the other end, when you're seeing bodybuilders train, you see them fucking pulling and pulling, and really what you'd like to do to create as much growth as possible and much damage as possible, you'd like to be able to take at least some, or if not most, of your sets to or even past failure, right? So that's why I would argue that the squat isn't the best quad builder, because you can't take a squat to or past failure. You'll bust your shit. You'll drop the bar. Even if you have a very capable spotter, you take a squat to failure, it's dangerous. And again, it's such a complicated, complex movement. As you start to approach and get closer and closer to failure, there's going to be tissue breakdown. You're not going to be able to maintain your position, which is so important when you're trying to isolate muscles. You have to be able to maintain position and the angle and the technique to be able to isolate that tissue. So if you're taking a squat to failure, like if you look at my, I did 405 for 34 reps for my 34th birthday. Those last 4 reps look a little different than the first 30. You know? So the point I'm making with this is, when it comes to exercise selection for strength versus hypertrophy, is the squat a tremendous leg developer? Absolutely. But I would definitely argue that a hack squat or a leg press is a much better leg developer when it comes to hypertrophy, not only because of the constraints of the machine, because you're safe, you have a back pad, you have a platform. So your ability to isolate and really feel whatever tissue you're after, let's say it's the quads, right? If you're doing a leg press, you can put your feet very low on the platform, which is going to allow a ton of knee flexion and a ton of knee extension. So you're going to get a ton of quad work, and you're balanced. You're in a machine. You don't have to worry about balance. You don't have to worry about dumping a barbell. You just focus on squeezing the shit out of your quads. Then you bring a buddy over, and let's say you get 10 reps and you can't do 11. Well, you can still lower it with control, because we're stronger in the eccentric than the concentric. You might not be able to pick something up, but you can still lower with control. So let's say you and I are training together, and you've done, with hypertrophy training, you usually do like a primer set, and then maybe a set that's a little heavier and get to your work weight, and then maybe another set that's at the work weight, leaving 2 or 3 reps in reserve. and then you do your work set. So I sit next to you, and let's say the set before where you left let's say you got 800 pounds in the leg press, and you took a set of 10 with 2 reps in reserve, right? Now I sit down next to you and I'm like, all right, let's see how many reps we can get. So you go back and you get that set of 10 again, you go 11, you go 12, and you fail. I help you. I say, lower it again. You lower the weight down. And then I'm there and I can help you on the concentric. So now we're in a realm where we're pushing past failure. We're damaging the shit out of your quads. And you're completely safe. You're in a machine. I'm there to help you. I can push you through that rep, and you can push as hard as you can. You are applying maximal force from the quad. Your muscles are screaming. And even though you're pushing as hard as you can, without my help, that weight's not going to move. So we're taking those muscles, those target tissues, far past failure. You can't do that on a squat safely. You can't do it. So I would argue that when it comes to bodybuilding, being able to use machines and things like that in your program and in your training is essential. I'm not going to say the leg press is better than the squat, but within the context of hypertrophy specifically, I would choose the leg press or a hack squat or a pendulum. Would I still squat as a bodybuilder? Absolutely, 100%. You still want to squat, but maybe I'll squat at the end of the workout. Maybe I won't squat in the beginning. If I'm training for bodybuilding, maybe I'll come in and I'll do some leg extensions, get my quads all juicy and all fucked up and full of blood. Then I'll do some hamstrings, get my hamstrings all juicy and full of blood, get my adductors and abductors going. Then I'm pre-exhausted. I got a bunch of pump in the muscle. Then I'll go to a leg press, right? And I'll crush that thing like we just talked about. Then maybe I'll do some lunges. And then maybe I'll finish with some squats because now my muscles are pre-fatigued, they're smoked. I'm not going to be able to necessarily squat as much weight as I normally would, but I don't give a shit. I'm not training to squat as much as possible. I'm using the squat to crush my quads, right? So not only are we talking about intent, which is extremely important, the way that we're actually mentally approaching the lifts, right? Having an understanding of what are we trying to get out of this? Are we trying to get stronger? Are we trying to get bigger, for example? So the intent and the approach is super important. But then you can kind of start to understand and conceptualize how important it is when it comes to exercise selection, when it comes to exercise execution, but also the order at which you do those exercises. And most of all, understanding that when it comes to hypertrophy, we're all very, and it's completely understandable. We're all very conditioned to associate success with more weight, more reps, right? Because, you know, with athletics, the fastest score wins, the heaviest lift wins, the highest score wins, the fastest time wins, right? So we're conditioned to associate success by lifting more weight or doing more reps. That's not the case with hypertrophy. It's not. A more successful set in reference to building tissue is probably going to be how close were you able to take that target tissue to failure or past failure. So I would argue, and this is the concept that we were speaking about these guys and girls that get nowhere in the gym. Mm-hmm. They're really trying to get bigger. 99% of people in the gym want to look better with their clothes on. So at the end of the day, they're bodybuilders. They're physique competitors. They want to get leaner. They want to build muscle. So they should train like bodybuilders. And within that context, if you got a guy, your guy at the gym that was benching 225 for sets of 10, right? He would be all excited and he would think that he made gains if he did 245 for a set of 10. But when you did 245 for 10, where did you feel it? Did you feel it more in the pecs? Are you using the bench press to develop your pecs? Is that why you're bench pressing? Or are you using the bench press to bench press more weight? If you're using the bench press to bench press more weight, you should probably be doing sets of 3 to 6. You shouldn't be doing sets of 10, but you're doing sets of 10. So rather than saying like, oh, I did 245 for 10 reps today, that's a win. Instead, what if we kept that 225 on and you got a set of 10? But then the next time around, I cued you a bit and I had you apply more intent. I had you really focus on getting the sternum up. I had you lower that weight with some tempo, and not only just lower it, but when you're lowering it, be very conscious of what's lowering it. When you're here, can you feel your pecs? Yes. Okay. Lower the weight with your pecs. Feel the pecs strengthen and lengthen. Then when you get to the bottom, can you feel your pecs? Are they stretched? Are they under a ton of load? Can you own that position? One of the biggest takeaways from a course I took this weekend with Dr. Mike Israetel is the importance of stretch influenced hypertrophy. So this is where the money is in the stretch position when it comes to hypertrophy. So when you're in the bottom position and that muscle's under load and completely stretched, can you really feel it? Yes. Okay, now push with this. Don't just push. Push with this. Feel your pecs. Feel your pecs. Now squeeze. Now lower again with the pecs. Push the pecs. So the point I'm getting at is I would argue that it's a more successful set within the context of building muscle. If you hit 225 for 10, but your second and third set, you fail at 7 or 8 reps because your pecs felt like they were going to tear off the bone, that is a more successful and beneficial set when it comes to building tissue than getting 245 for 10 and just feeling it wherever. A common question I get asked is like, hey, how many push-ups can you do? Well, like, I could probably do 100 push-ups, right? But I could also probably do 15 push-ups and make my pecs feel like they're going to tear off the bone. Which one's going to build more muscle? Right? But which one looks more impressive? The 100. And that's the thing, is a lot of these guys and girls are in the gym and they're focused more upon looking impressive and moving big weight and slapping more plates on the bar. But dude, that's the antithesis of what you should be doing. Of course, more load is, arguably creates more tension and more damage, but only if you can control it, only if you can maintain it. There's a threshold of how much weight we can lift from A to B and how much weight we can lift from A to B and really authentically feel it in the target tissue. And that's the language of hypertrophy. It's tension through the full range of motion in an isolated context. So it's like, yeah, as much weight as possible, but as much weight as you can move through the full range at the right angle with the target tissue performing the exercise start to finish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought everything that you said there, 100%. And what I thought was really good on there is that what was going through my head was, the assistance on a leg press or a hack squat. And one analogy that I've used, or one example that I've used, is you wouldn't have somebody helping you with like an assisted squat. Because when it comes to a squat, if you feel it, that's it. You'll the spotter's there, or if you're training someone will hold it. Whereas you wouldn't do a squat and then have somebody, on either side
through the next couple of reps. Yeah, you could on a Smith machine, arguably.
Yeah.
But you know what? Not if you're a strong guy. No one's helping you through 4 reps with 500 pounds on the bar.
No.
If it's a newbie, if it's one of my 105-pound female clients who's squatting 65, I can help her through reps till she vomits, but if anyone's underweight, you're just not going to be able to do it. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I've done plenty of hypertrophy workouts with a couple buddies. I went out and I studied with Cassim at N1, which was great. That guy fucking crushed me, dude. He crushed me. He saw me coming from a mile away and he's like, all right, motherfucker. And I was all for it. He had me on a hack squat and I was fucking done. And he was like, 6 more. I'm like, all right, motherfucker. And dude, I was done. That was one exercise. I was done. I was like, I'm done. I did one exercise, 15-minute workout. I was done. That's the other thing too. When it comes to hypertrophy, arguably, there's different approaches, but I would argue the best approach is the super high intensity, super specific, taking 2 to 3 movements far past failure with a ton of intent, very, very specific, direct, isolated tension. 45 minutes, go home, eat, come back, do it again the next day,
Yeah.
But when it comes to strength training, when you're preparing for a meet, you're at the gym 2.5, 3 hours because you got to warm up. You have to hit your, hit your sets to climb up to your top set. You got to hit your top set. Then you got to do your back offs. Then you got to bench. Then you got to do accessories. It ends up being a longer endeavor when it comes to strength training. Debatably, there's a lot of different ways to bake this cake, but generally speaking, when you're trying to build muscle, get in, crush that fucking muscle hard and fast, go home and eat and recover, and then come back and do it again. When it comes to strength training, it's a bit different of an approach where you kind of have a lot of boxes to check, a lot of things to get through. You're not just going to be training chest and tries. You're going to be training squat, bench, and accessories. So it tends to take a little more time. This is by no means saying one's harder than the other at all.
Yeah.
Anything done at an elite level is going to be hard as fuck, as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just understanding that they're different. Now, where they're the same is as a strength athlete, if I take, 12 weeks, 16 weeks and train a little more like a bodybuilder and put on some more tissue, gain a little bit more weight in a very isolated fashion. If I then go back to a strength block and I'm able to then coordinate all this new tissue I've created training like a bodybuilder, I should be able to express more strength, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the overlap. That's kind of where they mold. But in the moment, in the exercise, you got to pick one, right? So the way that I train, because I kind of like to do both all the time, unless I'm very close to a competition and I'm very sport specific. And by very close, I mean I'm talking like 4 weeks out. But the rest of my training year round is I kind of do all of it. So I always use lower body examples, but we'll just talk. So if I come in and I'm training my squat, I'll come in, I'll do a very extensive warm up because I'm a achy, sore pile of garbage because I've been doing this for way too long. I'll do my warm ups. I'll work up to my top set on squats, and I'm trying to be as efficient as possible, as coordinated as possible, right? I want to be able to coordinate all my muscles and my systems to move that barbell A to B with as little effort as possible. I mean, it's maximal effort, but you want to be efficient. So I'll work up to my top set, and then I'll do my back offs. And then I'll usually choose 1 or 2 barbell variations of that specific lift to directly address whatever sucks about it. So, if it's kind of sloppy in the bottom, I can use pause squats, tempo, reverse band, front squats, good mornings, whatever it may be. But I look at my top set and I look at my back offs, or I look at those over the course of the last few weeks. And it's pretty easy to determine what needs work. And I will, with an unbiased approach, choose whatever exercise or variation of will directly address that weak point, because the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So that will cover probably the first hour and a half of the session. That's the specific strength work. And then for the rest of the session, I train like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
I'll usually do some type of unilateral movement to address asymmetries and basically coordinate everything. So I love split squats, heel elevated, trail leg elevated, split squats and variations of. But after that, I'm a bodybuilder. I'll go into the leg press. I'll do some pre-exhaustion, leg extension, leg curls, really, really high volume. Just trying to get as much blood in the specific tissue as possible. I really try and isolate. I forget about all things coordination, just trying to create blood flow and cellular damage to bring up the muscles involved in the movement. And some may argue that that's kind of counterproductive, because if I'm trying to peak my strength, I should train for strength and then get out and recover. And people may argue that the cellular damage that I'm doing in my bodybuilding is it's going to need, I need to recover from that, just like I need to recover from the strength stimulus. So I'm basically digging even deeper of a hole to recover from. But again, I understand that concept and I do agree with it. So basically, like I said, I will train my accessories and my bodybuilding style lifts a lot harder 8, 12, 16, 20 weeks out. And then as I get closer to the competition, call it 8 to 12 weeks out, I will still do those exercises, but I won't take them to complete failure. I'll probably do, 2 RIR, 3 RIR, or maybe just take 1 set to complete failure. But again, I'm not taking a leg press to complete failure. Maybe I'll take a leg extension and a leg curl to complete failure. And then as I get closer to the competition, I don't even do that. So it's just basically understanding all these concepts and being aware of what I'm able to recover from, and just making these small little tweaks in the program as you approach a peak or as you're far away from a peak. Because again, at the end of the day, I do have a very specific goal in mind. And the more I can tailor and manipulate the way I execute exercises, the exercises I choose, and the frequency at which I do them to help create that end result.
Yeah, and as that example, at the end there, you go back to what you mentioned about when you're either trying to build the muscle or whether you're trying to get stronger within a movement. And when you said there about the leg press, taking it beyond failure, yeah, after a couple of changes in my programming and changes in my training, you kind of just like go to this different place, don't you? When you get those, what do you mean an extra couple of reps? But that goes back to, you know, some of the exercises are going to be quite humbling, you know, and be like, all right, okay, so this is what we've got to do now. One
Yeah,
thing
but
that you
all,
mentioned, sorry, go on.
just to build your point, just accept that you're safe. Like you're okay.
Yeah,
You know, if you're in a leg press, you got your boy to your left, you're safe. Nothing's gonna happen. Just close your eyes, bite down on the mouth guard if you have one, hold on to those fucking handles, and just keep fucking pushing. You're safe. You're okay. You're within the constraints of a machine. Mind your technique, you know, make sure everything's in the right spot and just go and go until you can't go anymore. And then keep going until your partner says you're done. And it's going to serve you well. You know, being able to handle discomfort and be comfortable being uncomfortable. It's not just for the gym, boys and girls. It translates to everything else you do. There's so much value to it. And a
yeah.
lot of you guys don't go there often enough. Again, don't be taking a leg press past failure 2 weeks out from a powerlifting competition. But when you're in your off season as a strength athlete or as a bodybuilder, let's go, man. Get in the machine and take it. Take it as far as you can.
Yeah, definitely, and just have that out of body experience, and just watch it. Just watch yourself on the on the leg press. I think sometimes one
It's
thing,
too good. You can't
yeah,
walk. You can't walk. You can't breathe. It's such a cool feeling, you know.
yeah, it's like that. The thing that goes through my head, and we were literally trained a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, have you seen Wolf of Wall Street?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, where he's going down the stairs and he can't walk. It's literally, yeah, literally just like that, which we were laughing about.
Yeah, but he's on drugs. He wasn't working out.
Yeah, but yeah, with one thing that I wanted to touch on, which might be, which will be a little bit of a tangent. You spoke about doing sort of the same thing, and again, a little bit of a tangent. But in terms of exercise order, so when we're speaking about people doing the same things, and you mentioned a couple of topics there, like pre-exhaustion, getting blood flowing into the muscle, and most people will go in and they'll squat, they'll bench, or they'll deadlift first, or they'll do all the exercises that they want to first, and by the time it gets to things at the end, the effort, the intent that they're going to be able to put in isn't going to be that much because they might be tired. What are your thoughts on sort of changing that order around sometimes and adding some things that they're not so good at the start? Because no one ever misses the first exercise of the workout. Whereas when it gets to the end of the workout, people might skip it a little bit because it's at the end of the workout. I'll just add it on to the next one. What are kind of your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
they're not able to apply as much intent and focus on the stuff at the end because
Yeah.
it's not that it's not as important, but they're tired. So basically, the answer to that is just understand your why. You know, what are you after? What are you after? What are you trying to do? And if you're able to understand that and isolate that, at that point, then you can kind of start making decisions in your exercise selection and exercise order to reach that very specific goal. So it's important to have a goal, and that's kind of the thing. A lot of people are going to the gym because they want to look and feel better, which is great. So to be a little more specific and identify exactly what you're looking for, then you can kind of start to tailor it a bit to reach that certain thing. And a lot of the times, the harder path, the path you might not want to take, is probably the right one, right? So, for example, if if you're training for strength and there's a tremendous weakness in the squat, for example, you can address that with certain exercises that are very, very challenging and very, very humbling beforehand. And that will probably take away from what you can squat that day because you didn't squat first. But long term, once you bring up that weak point, again, the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So if you repair that weak link, when you come back to it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks down the road, and you let the squat come back in the forefront of your training, you should be able to do more than you did before. It's just being able to understand the why and then determine, what are some kind of tactics and approaches and strategies we can use to get there. So first, determining and understanding exactly why you're doing something is essential to then be able to develop a plan as to do it. And a lot of people just change things up just to change things up, which is great, but that's probably not going to get you as far as if you have a more finite and specific reason behind doing so. So just always asking yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? And if you can't give yourself an answer, you're probably doing the wrong shit. You should probably do something so that when someone asks, hey, why are you doing this exercise like this at this point in the workout? You should be able to tell them exactly why. right? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And it's just having a more kind of tactical approach to your training, given whatever the result you're looking for is.
Yeah, and I think that kind of brings it kind of full circle for what we said at the start, where people are planning too much, but not maybe asking questions, just thinking they're trying to cover the base of everything, add everything in, rather than actually questioning. Because the thing that I'll say to my clients is, ask me why have I put that in there? Because then there's got to be a reason behind it. It's not just if they're shit and giggles to be like, yeah, just do that, that's fine. Like there's a goal of, right, actually I want to increase my squat, or I want to build my quads, or whatever it may be. Right, okay, then now we're getting a little bit more specific, and the effort and intent that we're putting in is actually serving a purpose to create progress, rather than just like what we've touched on a couple of times, just spinning the wheels. So you kind of preempted it there. I thought that was a good message there. But as usual,
just to build on what you said about talking to your clients, that's more often than not a great conversation to have with your clients. I think a lot of people in this industry kind of purposely try and keep their clients a little ignorant and keep their clients dependent. But on the other side of that, I'm a huge proponent of getting your clients to buy in, getting them to understand, because that's a huge component of all of this, and building a training business that lasts is getting your clients to buy in. And the best way to do that is to offer them an understanding as to why you're doing what you're doing. And it also keeps you honest as the trainer. So, take the time to educate the people that you work with so that they can continue to progress. And then as they continue to progress, that forces you to continue to progress as well, because you don't want your client to outgrow you. So it ends up being a great kind of like accountability tactic to, if they're interested. And believe me, probably a good amount of people I train don't give a shit. They just want to come in, they want me to tell them what to do, they want to get the fuck out of here. But when you're training competitive athletes, bodybuilders, or fitness enthusiasts, they're curious, and tell them why. Have the conversation. And if you don't know, don't be bashful to say, I don't know. Let me look into it. Or let's have a conversation and figure it out. The more involved you can get these people in the process, the better. For one, because it buys them in, but it also creates this kind of learning environment for both you and the client, to develop not only their own physique and their own progress, but also your own as a professional. These conversations are so great to have for so many reasons. Wouldn't you agree?
I think we've, especially, basically, we're in the process of taking on some new coaches as we're growing as a membership, which is pretty cool. And a lot of things I'll say is everyone talks about sort of like gaining experience, gaining knowledge, whereas actually a lot of knowledge and experience can be gained. I've been on the. I was coaching this morning, and you're going to get asked questions. People are going to ask you questions, and it's kind of that thing of, right, we'll go find the answers, go and learn that, and that's that continued development. Like, I know we've spoken about courses and that sort of stuff, which is really good and has that knowledge base. But in terms of real world working with clients and that continued development, like try and answer those questions, because that's what's going to build you up your experience and be able to relate it to the people that you work that's in front of you. So 100%, I quite like
that's that. The most valuable. That's the most valuable piece is seat time. Getting experience in the field and work. And I did a questions thing on my Instagram today, and one of the questions was a young kid. I know who he is. He used to train here and lift here, and he must be starting a personal training business somewhere else. And he asked, what's the best way to get clients getting started in a new gym? And I said, just fucking train people, dude. Just bleed. Just get out there and train people for nothing or for very, very low rates, just to build experience and to build connections. And also, because when you're working with people, we're on stage all the time. So depending on the layout of your gym, but gyms are usually pretty open. When I'm on the floor and I'm working with a client, I'm essentially on stage. I'm putting on a show for everybody. And the catalyst that really launched me into being able to build a big personal training business was just that. They had these things called tri-packs at Boston Sports Club where I started. It was $79 for 3 half-hour sessions. And as the trainer, you made $10 for selling it. So you made $10 for training 3 half-hour sessions. But it wasn't supposed to necessarily fill your pockets as much as it was supposed to give you the opportunity to get in front of somebody, work with them, and then solicit your training services down the line. So what ended up happening in April of 2010, they had a sale and they sold tri-packs for $29. Now I'd been at that gym for a couple months, just lifting my ass off, training, talking to people. Just I knew everybody on a first name basis. So, and everyone saw me train. So when that sale happened, I sold like fucking 200 of them. I sold like crazy tri-packs. I didn't make any goddamn money, but for the next few months, I was on the floor around the clock working with people, all different people, kids, college students, high school students, athletes, middle-aged men and women, stay-at-home moms, and the elderly. And what ended up happening is a good 30, 40, 50% of those people ended up buying sessions, but also people saw me on the floor. They saw the way that I trained, which is probably very intimidating to a lot of people, but then they saw me work with young kids. They saw me work with elderly, which is brand new to me, but they basically could see the dynamic of my approach and being cautious and attention to detail and kind of being, kind of soft and helping these people because, I didn't really realize it, but I was on stage the whole time. So that led to a lot of referrals and a lot more business. And within 3 months, I was doing 140 to 160 sessions a month. I was the highest paid trainer in the gym in a matter of 3 months. And I look back and I wonder, and I'm like, I wonder if they ever had that sale, if I ever would have taken off, or if I would have just given up and done something else. That, that period of time where I was kind of like indirectly encouraged to train a ton of people for peanuts, I developed a ton of experience. I was able to really develop my kind of song and dance and approach, which is still developing to this day constantly, because, as trainers, we need to be students of this practice even more so than our clients. We always have to learn and adapt and grow and understand because we're dealing with people, we're dealing with humans. So it's an ever-changing practice. But that was a huge opportunity for me to not only get out in front of people, but to learn what the hell to do as a trainer in the first place. So when it comes to developing your business and building your business in the onset, you just have to work. You have to work. If you make some money, great, but you probably won't. You probably won't for the first bit. You got to get out there. You got to get in front of people. You got to talk to people, make connections, and be on stage. And that's what did it for me. And I can really only speak on that from my own experience.
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful. I know, get questions from like younger coaches and people just getting into the industry, if you like. I kind of from the last time I usually ask what's the take home points of words of wisdom, but you've kind of thrown three or four out there at the end from that. Thanks a lot, Steve, for taking the time to jump back on again. Really enjoyed the first episode, and like I say, really good that we could catch up. For anyone listening who didn't listen to the first time that we spoke, or can see all the content information that you put out there, or even ask you any questions about the strength and the hypertrophy that we've spoken about, or even just advice on coaching and developing, where can people find you or reach out to you?
Well, to hear a little bit more about that topic specifically, strength versus hypertrophy, that's one of the first episodes I did on my own podcast, the Top Strength Cast. If you just go on the podcast app, I think Spotify, I think even YouTube, it's up. But definitely the podcast app is Top Strength Cast, TOP Strength Cast, CAST with Steve Tripp. That's like the first or second episode. I think I had like 15 or 16 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm revving back up with that. So there's some decent
I've been
content
keeping listening to him, so
yeah, no, I appreciate it because that was something I was encouraged to do, and I didn't know what the hell I was getting myself into, but it's been extremely well received. It's gone so well, and I'm so grateful to get the feedback and hear what people like and dislike. And similar to you, it's my goal to offer as much value through that platform as possible, and it's gone pretty well so far. I got some more episodes lined up, so I'll be dropping episodes probably on a weekly basis, if not starting the end of April, early May. But my handle on Instagram is StripCam, at StripCam, STRIPPCAM. You can always slide in, follow me there. I post my workouts just about every day and talk a bunch of shit on the story. That's about what you can expect on my platform. And then of course the gym at the Top Strength Project. There's an Instagram there. There's a website. And that's probably the best way to get in touch with me. But I really appreciate you having me on again. I'm always happy to do this. And if you want to do another one, you know where to find me, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely, and 100% everyone listening. I've been following Steve's podcast 100%. Look, there's some really, really good episodes in there. I've been really enjoying it. So 100% check out the stuff that Steve's putting out there. So great to catch up with you. Really appreciate you taking the time to jump back on again. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I'll see you all next week.
See you guys. Thanks for listening.